Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today's episode is a good buddy of mine named Vinnie Fisher. He's a super successful entrepreneur. He owns a great company that we've done business with on multiple occasions in the past called Fully Accountable. They do fractional CFO and accounting work for a lot of big players in the online and internet marketing space. He's built an amazing organization because a lot of us are great at developing business and growing the company. We just manage the finances really poorly, unfortunately, and that's why his business is booming, because he provides a big value to the marketplace. So I really enjoyed the conversation with him today. We talked a lot about just leadership and growth and mentorship and all the crazy shit with the lockdowns going on. I can't have a whole episode without talking about all the bullshit lockdowns. But yeah, overall, just a really great conversation. It's one of those conversations where there's a few things I wrote down where I just continue to learn on these episodes to be a better leader and be a better person. So I do hope you enjoy. Also, if you do like this episode, make sure to subscribe, rate 5 stars on Apple iTunes. And also, we are going to be running some promos. Maxwell Finn, my partner who has his podcast, The Unicorn Perspective, we're going to be running some cash giveaways to send some screenshots of you subscribing to both of our shows. I think we're giving away $1,000 for this promo. We're probably looking to do that once every month or once every quarter, just to get some more followers and build some momentum with both of our podcasts. We've both been putting a lot of time and energy into these. So again, keep an eye out for that as well, and hope you enjoy the show.
This is Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams, where differing opinions are not only accepted, they're encouraged.
All right, Vinny, we're live. What's up, man? Thanks for being on.
Yeah, man, I'm so excited. I love that we can take what is our normal friend conversation and then turn it on live let everyone else be part of it. So that's cool.
Yeah, man, and it's been a while since I've seen you, since March, right? The last event in the history of events was our event.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually tell people, like, literally one of the last things I did was hung out with actually you and Max, and like there's been a baby, a house, business stuff. There's been literally, you might not even realize, I've lost almost 40 pounds in weight since I would have seen you.
I see it in your
like
face. Yeah,
thanks, buddy.
That's awesome.
I'd stand up and show you the rest, but I'm actually, thanks to Glenn Dawson and some stuff I've changed in my life, like I'm a massively physically different person than when all of this started.
Yeah. So what's been the secret to that? That was actually the first thing I noticed when I saw you. You looked thinner in the face, and that's a good thing if you lose it on the face, right?
Yeah, actually, it's one of the first places I put it on, and the big deal for me on that. Thank you for first noticing, and I think the big deal, everyone wants to know the 2-step process. They want to know what I'm eating and what I'm doing to work out, right? So it's the 2-part question. And I got to be honest with you, for me, if I'm going to be as super real as I can be, I had to first discover my addictions and kind of gluttony around food. This was a food journey first and foremost for me. And so the battle of withholding and removing certain categories of food so that I could actually lose weight, burn stuff, and have a different relationship to food has been the first part of the battle. Now, the good news is I work out a little and I'm stronger, and I do things like sit-ups and try to, I don't ever wake up with this super desire to get sweaty. I'm working on it. I'm there. I'm not like living defeated or have this weird relationship to that. But for me, this has been somewhere north of 95% of food journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what type of foods have you had to remove from your life?
I needed to do it simple, right? People and I love some of our friends in the workout community who are like, measure your calories, do this with your macros, do all these things. And I think they're spot on with what they're saying. I just needed a simple thing. And so for me, I just first round eliminated eating anything with an ingredient. So I ate meat vegetables and fruit. And that was it. And people are like, oh, so that's this. And they put a label on it. I'm like, I don't know, is that fruit, vegetables, and meat? Then yeah, that's what I'm eating. And so I started there, and I've kind of stayed there. I'm not a legalist. I'm not like I don't ever try to have two bad days in a row. Like if I have a bad moment, I don't try to let myself double down with a second bad day. I forgive myself for that bad day and go start at bats. But I'm real thankful for the Lord's given me like this resolve where I now have it 6 months later have an entirely different relationship to food.
That's amazing. And I don't know if you can tell as well. I haven't quite lost 40 pounds, but I've lost 20 pounds since I've seen you.
Yeah, you look good, dude.
And it's for me, it's definitely food too. Like I'll do like daily workouts, and I'll move my body some for sure. But I agree, like 90% of it for me has been the diet, and it's kind of what I do. I'm a big intermittent faster now, and if I eat like shit one day, which is a lot more rare than it was, but if I eat like shit
Yeah.
the next day, I'll eat really, really, really clean and balance it out. And it's just I don't have a perfect system, but I like probably I shared on my last couple episodes because I'm fucking stoked about it, Vinny. I'm probably my lowest weight since about high school. Pretty close, so that's good. Well, it is my lowest since high school, and I'm pretty close to my high school weight. I was like 195, 200 in high school. I'm about 210 right now. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I was probably like 230 when I saw you.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
bud. And I'll tell you, I've listened to some of your stuff and watching. It shows up in energy in the mind. It shows up in energy and like the ability to give output to other people. So like, I started this journey almost 205. When I'm in my like shame mode, I'll say like 201 and change. When I'm being honest with a friend where everyone's listening to us, I'm like, it's probably more like 204 and change. And here I sit plus minus 170 today. And I haven't touched this number ever in my adult life other than a very brief moment. Like, so I'm back to like college days of weight that like, high school's unfair because I grew in college to my correct size. I was little, scrawny guy.
For sure.
But it's showing up in like other ways. Like the thing I'm the most excited about through all this maybe is some of the food idolatry things for me, like fighting that. But I'm actually physically feel better where I can show up more for my kids. I'm leading better at work. I have like some internal energy and feeling better that allows me to translate into being more engaged and present with the people that are already in my life.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. You just feel better. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so crazy. I think it was maybe when I commented and saying happy birthday to you, or for whatever reason, I was just stalking your Facebook and some recent memory, and I remember even back then I was like, wow, Vinny looks a lot better now than like some older
Ever.
pictures. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
right.
which is awesome. So I mean it just shows that it's never too late to do whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, if the old boy can do it, I want to encourage all of you guys. You can do it. Like, and you know what? It's one day. Like here I am 6 months later, 202 days later. I'm not even that long actually, because it's less than that. I'm in my 6th month. We started this journey early May. I kind of hit my broken point end of April during all this, and one at bat at a time. I just I wish since we live in this digital automation era that there was this easy button. And there isn't one, but I'm excited to tell you, as a guy who's on the other side of it, yeah, it's good. I'm not promising more days. I'm just promising better days if you try it.
Yeah, even like Sylvester Stallone, I think it was in his prime, he would eat really clean 5 days a week, and then Saturday and Sunday he would just eat and drink whatever he could get his hands on. And it's just like, dude, if you can just if 5 out of the 7 days you can just be rock solid, that's a good place to be. So that's that's kind of how I'm doing my best to operate. Is like on the weekends I want to have fun with my friends, and then as a byproduct you end up eating a little bit cleaner on the weekends because you just don't want to feel like an asshole. But during the week I just do my best to be as disciplined as possible. I have my meal preps, I have my food delivered to me, and yeah, it's just it's cliche, but it honestly is just like a lifestyle. You just eat a little bit cleaner. Like I'm just eating a lot less dairy. I'm not drinking soda. It's just, and you feel better throughout the
It's the
day.
lifestyle.
Yeah. So
And I really, in fairness to everyone listening, to put a bow on this part of the conversation, my personality, I'm like all in or I'm all out. And so for me, I might have to do things a little different than somebody else. And so, I don't know that there's a one size fits all formula, but I do know this, that if you can identify and claim some of your issues with relationships to food, it takes this dark enemy out of the closet and makes it real. And so I tell people now, like I legit have a sugar addiction. Like I don't ever wake up and not think about juju fruits and candy. And like it's just a real temptation. I'm thankful, almost like an addict, to win the day by avoiding and overcoming the temptation.
100%, man. And I've always just been like a bigger guy. I've had like a bigger frame, and I can just tell you like how I feel now, like even just like operating, walking around the city of Orlando, you feel better. It exudes confidence. Your energy's better. It's just I would recommend it for everybody, especially in the online marketing space. I feel we get a little comfortable because we get to work from home. We don't have to get dressed nice every day, so you kind of just don't care about your physical appearance as much, except now we're not even going to conferences and stuff, so it's like we just sit at home all day. So yeah, man, what
it's slow fade stuff, right? Like I don't think people set out to want to do. I didn't set out to want to add 30, 40, in some cases 50 pounds to my body. It's just actually sometimes I would eat out of enjoyment, not just stress, or like it would be celebratory eating too. Like, and if things are going well, that it's not everyone's just eating out of depression. Like there's also the king's hoarding too. Like that goes in both directions.
Yeah. I mean, what do we do when we go to these masterminds and things? We go to these delicious dinners 4 nights in a row, probably eating 2,000 calories in a dinner, like going to bed stuffed, and then we just do the next thing the next day, and it's fun. You're with a bunch of people you like, but that 30 times a year will definitely add up.
Yeah, it's so true, buddy.
So what have you been up to in 2020, Vinny, since I saw you? I think we've texted here and there over the last 6 or 7 months, but what's been going on business wise? You guys crushing it?
We really are. I'll tell you, I think the reason I'm so thankful we started this conversation on where I am physically and what that's doing to me mentally and spiritually is translating into our businesses. We were poised to do well with the way this correction and shutdown, our position in the marketplace was poised to do well. But quite honestly, I'm probably, if I'm being honest with my assessment of self-evaluation, I'm leading better as a CEO now than any time I can remember when I've held that title. And when I look at our business categories, like we own 3 operating companies, and I've learned that my job is to spend time at this season of my career continuing leadership development, right? So I don't run the day-to-day of any of the 3 companies that we operate. I really spend my time being available to work with the COOs and leadership team of each one of those organizations. And my ability to show up and do that is huge. And I'm quite thankful that I have a gear for wanting to invest in. I'm just at a different phase, right? When you're younger, you're in the success phase and you want to do everything you can to kind of make the success needle. And I don't hear me wrong, I love the success phase, but I'm also in this significance phase. I'm older, right? I'm 50 now. I'm like, how do I create generational impact, legacy? And so my days spent in leadership development. Well, because of that, in each of our companies, we're like not only responding to market conditions, but we're like taking ground, the ground that we're not going to give back to other people.
Yeah, I've always kind of looked at you, by the way, and we've had conversations about team culture and leadership, and you've given me some really good feedback on a lot of those things because I think so much of it just comes with experience. Like I can read as many books as I want. I can just think of ideas, but ultimately you just have to like experience the atmosphere with the team. I mean, what do you think you're doing now that's making you such a great leader that you weren't doing when you were, maybe my age, like 20 years ago?
I'm such a hard charger, right? And I will literally jump off the cliff, and halfway down I'll determine whether or not I've actually packed a parachute. I will go, 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 go. I still have a gear of go, go, go. I'm probably one of the most risk tolerant people. And it's ironic for someone who's trained as a lawyer that I know in all the people I do business with. I also have like some gifting to make a complex situation rather clear. Well, when you mix all that together, I can go too fast for people and I can hard charge and expecting them to follow. So what's actually happening different now is I'm helping people get there, not show them that I'm already there. And that's the huge difference. I know that sounds maybe cliche-ish, but I'm spending more time in questions, helping my team figure it out so that their wisdom is developing instead of just imparting my wisdom onto them.
Interesting. Can you share a recent example of that? Kind of what you're referring to? Like anything that's come up in the
Yeah,
last week
so
or
we
two?
just I can pick every day.
Okay,
So
perfect.
literally yesterday, we just terminated one of our CFOs. Like, so we do fractional CFO, one of our companies, fully accountable. And one of those team members was missing the beat. Well, fast backtrack to last week, I was sitting with our COO and I was actually, let's say, almost interviewing her for her assessment of our team, asking her continually, grade people whether they're above the minimum requirement, they're meeting the minimum requirement, or they're below the minimum requirement. And this was a process I brought her through, like through the shutdown, like are people in, out? Is it on us? Is it on them? Well, the other day, kind of went through one of those discussions, and I already knew that we needed to cycle him out. He wasn't going to be a good fit for the team, and we put him in the wrong position. He wasn't going to succeed at, and very competent in his accountancy, but just the CFO executive party was not going to embrace, nor Kenny, and that was our fault. That was on us, not on him. And I knew that the other day on Thursday. And so instead of me saying, "Hey, today we need to let this gentleman go," I literally helped her get back to me, like talk to me what's working, what's not. And what she did, spent the next day asking some peers, not because of groupthink, but because she's trying to validate some of those internal, like knowing what's the right thing, and came back to me, which just happened to be our board meeting for the fourth quarter the next day. It timed out that way. And so the three of us who own the company were sitting there talking about the assessment of this above the line, meet the line, below the line. And it was important that they got there. In this case, she got there first, maybe second to me getting there. But she got there so that she could make a recommendation that we needed to do this, as opposed to her just following through on my directive that we needed to do this.
Yeah. Huh. That's some wisdom, Vinny. That I feel like that's the direction I'm getting to as a leader, and that's where I know I need to be. It's still I'm making progress. I know for sure. I still think sometimes I just lack the patience, and I'm just like, this is what needs to be done. But what you're saying is 100% the route to go. I know that's the case. Yeah.
I'll tell you, how old are you, Jeremy?
30.
Yep. And congratulations. I thought we celebrated a birthday recently and all that stuff. And here's what I would say to that. You are so far ahead of where I was at 30. I was so unhealthy in so many ways. My personality of hard charging and all that is still there. My overabundance of confidence still existed. I would have just run hard through things. And the fact that you're even having a temperature gauge to think about helping to bring other people along is huge. That success module of the 30-year-old is ridiculous, right? It's get to the top of the mountain at all costs, and to be able to like be the type of leader regardless of situations who turns around and people are following you because they want to, not because they have to. Man, if you could figure that out in the 30s module, buddy, oh gosh, you'll be so entrenched in good leadership development. And I had to take an honest assessment of that. I look back to some of that reckless way I led. I was so in a hurry to share my ability to grow things and my, I don't know, whatever level of wisdom or intelligence that looks like. And I didn't really spend time like loving the neighbors that were right around me. And one of the hilarious things through that whole process is had I actually done, I wasn't ready to do it. I think I just got ready later. But if had I done that sooner, I would have realized a big secret that a business that has your shadow cast all over it is going to have a super hard time growing outside of your shadow unless you embrace this idea that in developing other leaders is far better than you running everything.
Yeah. I mean, you're 1,000% right on that. It's just a matter of it takes discipline. I mean, where do you think, and not just business owners, but just management in general, like younger, less experienced leaders, where do you think they're making the most mistakes and dropping the ball the most?
I think that people make statements about self-awareness. I think a house that's not on a firm foundation can't stand. And I think of I wrote a book, and by the way, I want to give that book away to everybody. And so I created a gift page for you guys, for everyone, where they can get this stuff. So I'm not asking anyone to buy things. I'm not asking anyone to do anything, but I created a gift page, and on that gift page at fullyaccountable.com/openly outspoken, you can go get all this stuff. Okay, so you can get it. And one of the things they can get is a book that I wrote called The CEO's Mindset. And in there, the first chapter is all I'm dog daring you to read. Anyone is the first chapter. It's the name of the book, and it's so important to me. And it's so important to where I'm going with this is I think that the heartbeat of an organization is the leader person who's not only taking all the risk, but pushing forward in this ownership desire of what he or she really wants out of it. And so everyone drafts off of that. So when your head's down, their head's going to be down. When your head's up, their head's going to, like, they are looking to you for leadership. And a house that's not on a firm foundation can't stand. And so I think every young person needs to continually work on self-improvement, self-development, self-awareness. I would have loved to have had an old crotchety guy like myself talking to me when I was younger about continual self-development. It means self-awareness. Like, I'm able to put language around the weaknesses I have, not because I want to improve them, because I'm going to go fill them in, my dents, with other people, and I'm going to go build on my strengths. And they're going to take the parts of our organization that I'm not going to take because they know that they have to do it, because Vinny's really clear that he can't do it. And early on, because of my over-exuding competence and all my ability to charge, people assumed I could pull every lever. And so when I stopped pulling certain levers, we broke stuff. So the CEO's Mindset's a little bit of a journey of one of the 8-figure businesses that I broke by not being self-aware.
Yeah.
And so I'd say the young stage, the more a young man or woman can work on self-awareness in a way to put language around that and openly be vulnerable about that, that's someone who's going to be building depth in their organization.
I like that. And what are your thoughts? What I dealt with a lot in my 20s, especially when I started my first company at 22, my manufacturing company, I had false confidence, I would call it. Like, I had my ego and I pretended like I was confident, but deep down I didn't have the confidence that I was experienced enough to be a good leader, or that I knew how, or I was knowledgeable enough. That still comes up for me, by the way, today. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much, especially in our internet marketing world. Every day I'm like, holy shit, there's so much I don't know. But how do you think you find that balance of, because I believe it's important to have confidence in your leadership ability and your decision making ability, but not be like what I was in my early 20s, which was just my decisions and thought process are better than everybody else's, kind of just giant ego. Where do you develop a healthy level of confidence? Because I feel like that's so crucial, and that's something I still work on today.
For me, I just had breakfast with a young man that I've grown up with, and I would say he would look to me as a mentor. And he's just about to approach his 20s. He's in his late teens, and
There you go, starting young. That's awesome.
well, I think that if you're going to really help people, you gotta truly. I'm excited. Like I'm going to answer that question, but I'm excited about where the next journey of my life is also heading. And at some point here, I'm going to raise my hand and do leadership development, not for pay, maybe for like life significant stuff. And so, again, I'm not really prepared to mentally like blab out what I think that looks like, but I know I'm heading there. And I reread a book recently, Halftime, Success and Significance, and I see some of the doorways opening up to that. But I'll tell you, back to your core question, like, how do you develop some of that? I'm quite thankful when I take an assessment of some of the personality traits I have. When I look at a healthy version of me, I look at failure as an opportunity to learn something. I was at a volleyball game, my daughter's volleyball game yesterday, and I watched this young girl, bless her heart, not try for a ball that she may have had a shot at getting. And I saw a glimpse of something I've seen in me and other people when she chose not to go for that ball. There are people, and I've done this, if you don't try, you can't fail. So this way you don't fail. You live in a position where you aren't failing. And the joy of trying is one of the best gifts you can get. And so skinning my knee, falling down, breaking a business, having a bad employment hire, having a breakup in partnership has all been like part of this PhD of like life. And like for me, failure has never been a destination. It's been kind of a spurring on. When I'm in my unhealthy version of me, I saw failure as shame and like disappointment, or like when it gets reversed in my head. And so to me, if I could just get everyone to take the dare of trying and then do what I've done successfully, most of the time I don't give up, then I think you might find out that things like, well, you're going to find out in my book, if you dare to read the first chapter, is that I just need about 70% of information to make a decision. And I live with the 30% gap because we're going to get smarter. I actually have embraced something for so long in my career, just never had language around it. I'm actually a split tester. Not because people say that we should split test, but I take little tries. I try things. And I don't bet the farm on my idea until I try stuff.
Yeah.
And it just continues to improve. That's would be my advice.
Yeah. How do you think like these like leadership tactics and just experience, I'm assuming that has some impact in how you lead in your home and your family as well? Like how do those overlap?
They're completely overlapped. I think, I'd say there was a point in my career where you would see that I wasn't leading as well at home as I was in the office. And so I wasn't on a firm foundation. But as a dad with 4 adults in home and my wife of 25 years, I have this massive privilege to not only lead with coworkers, in church community, but my home. And if that's probably some of the legacy stuff I'm most working on and most present about. But I'll tell you, just the other day, I lost my mind on my youngest. Like, I didn't like what she was doing, and I could have been a much healthier version of Vinny, but I lost my crap. I was yelling. I was like a temper tantrum, chucking things, saying things. Well, I had to have with great humility once I calmed down, and it turned out to be the next day. I had to go with her with great humility and apologize, but from a position as the leader in the family, not as like but here's what you did wrong. And so, gosh, if you aren't refining your privilege to lead others at home, then I think you're leading two lives. And my heart breaks for that because I know what that guy looks like. I did that in shame. And so I'm quite thankful that I get to work my at-bats at. My family sees leadership. They listen to my podcast. Today, I just happened to be in our studio in my office at work, but I could easily be shooting this at home. And my wife and at least my adult child who's doing college would hear that. And I don't, what would the pulse be at home? Would they resonate with that sounds true? Or would the embellishment sound like you're saying something, but you're not actually living it? So with that duplicity, how would it play out in your home? There was a season of my life where I would say I was duplicitous, and I'm quite thankful that I'm not serving two masters on that issue, because that is another massive uptick. I'm thankful for a number of years now. Like, when you look at the leadership temperature in both environments, they should track each other, and that's a big deal. You learn a lot from leading kids. Like,
Yeah.
eventually you start to realize you're not as in control of them as you might wished you were, and so that's like leading your team.
Yeah, I obviously don't have kids at this point, as of whatever today's date is. Let's see here, October 6th, 2020. I don't have any kids, but
Yeah.
I can imagine there's some correlation there. Like, something we've talked about a lot too, and I appreciate this about you. Like, I've honestly learned a lot from you. And I also, by the way, it's a random compliment. At our mastermind, I just appreciate your ability to just talk about so many subjects. We needed because it was right before COVID, we had a few speakers just kind of last minute say I can't make it, and you just you weren't scheduled to speak until the fall event, which we rescheduled to December, by the way. I hope you can make it. And
Cool.
you just
I
like,
saw that. It's like kind of a Christmas party and all that stuff, right?
yeah,
That's
no,
fun.
a holiday
Yeah.
party, Vinny. I wanted to be
Oops.
inclusive of. No.
That's right.
I'm just playing with you. I almost called it a Christmas party just because I'm like, I started my own business so I can do whatever I want. But I was like, I'll just call it a holiday party. I'm like, I'll just be appropriate there. But
By the way, Jared, I'll say something. I don't find friction in that. For me, Jesus is important, and for me, my faith with him is important. But I'm also not trying to create gaps with our people. Like, during this COVID stuff, same thing. Like, certain people feel certain ways about concern of health and masks and all that. And I think as leaders, our job is to meet our team at the lowest common denominator and lead from there, not drag everyone to a different place. And so, hey, if holiday feels like we're trying to be loving and more open and inclusive, and it's not being shameful towards what we believe, I agree with that. I'm good with that.
yeah, for sure. And it was just something. It's just like, hey, we have enough things to worry about. I will say that's maybe an area of growth for me is I've been pretty set on the fact that I think all these lockdowns are really, really stupid, and I don't agree with them. And
I've seen your story.
I still to this day think it's, again, I've been for day one. Let's protect the vulnerable and the rest of people like me. If we get a cold, we get a cold. Like, we shouldn't shut down the country. I will gladly get a cold for the future of this country. So that's where maybe I haven't been the best as I could as a leader. Is I've just been like, hey, like we should never shut down the country for something like this. I mean, I still every day, and I thought I would get a little used to it by now. No, Vinny. I still every day think it's ridiculous.
I would really make sure I validate you. Like, rarely will people see me make a big public statement where I fit on things. Like, when you make those things, I really do have some personal feelings about how I feel about it. But that young man that I told you I was mentoring. Well, he mentored me. We were talking, and he said, if wearing a mask helps someone else, what's the big deal? And I'm like, what do you mean? And I wanted to punch him at the time when I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable. And I'm like, masks are stupid and I don't get it. And it's still going to spread. And I had all my like talking point facts ready to go. And he's like, if really what you are is someone who wants to help lead people who, with your strong personality, where are they going to feel comfort in leadership? Like, if you're going to destroy your witness over a mask, is that what you're going to make your stand? I'm like, I'm not talking to you. Shut up. I'm like, darn it. And I really started to soften to like, you know what? Am I really going to make my Bunker Hill something that is at best a jump ball? Or am I just going to like I have someone on my team who they have a compromised grandmother in their home. And, all my personal attributes aside, if I can help make our office a bubble to help him perform, then you know what? When I said earlier, leadership kind of is there in the absence of it, people are going to follow anybody. Well, I'm thankful my heart softened to a polarized position because, I think there are probably other things that I want to, so to speak, die for and be known for than maybe some of the illogical political conflict stuff. And it's tough, bud. You're my bud. I'm spot on with like 99% of the stuff you're saying. It's just we've been given this responsibility where other people are going to draft off some of our things. Like you see above my head, without leadership, people perish. And I've just chose to try to work hard at putting my thorny paw crybaby stuff. And I'm not knocking you. I'm saying this is me, man.
Yeah.
Like people are going to respond off that. And so I'm trying. And my arguing and complaining is probably saved mostly for my wife and core 3. And I'm trying to do everything I can to help lead through a massive time of division.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't even, I'm very libertarian. I'm progressive on many things. I'm conservative on many things. I don't think anybody that's just like, this is the right way of thinking is the right, like either extreme is a giant disaster in my opinion. But I'm going to just challenge you on this mindset because you're like, I feel like you're just falling into the society says this is the way we can support people. And rather than have my own opinion and think about it, I'm just going to say, okay, sure, I'm going to help people because this is the right thing to do. But there's 1,000 ways people every day don't help people. Like, why don't you, all of your free cash, Vinny, millions of people die a year from hunger. Why don't you just why do you need all this extra money in your bank account? Why doesn't you and everybody in your team donate all your money? You would be saving lives if you donated to hunger. The point is, and I don't, donate money to hunger. I'm a couple nonprofits, but we as a society, we tell our people what is the acceptable thing in the modern now to act like you give a shit. And then that's what we do. And if you don't comply with that, then you're a selfish asshole. Like if you look at the data, that COVID-19 is a little bit deadlier than the flu. It's, 50 to 100,000 people a year die of the flu. We're at about 200,000. It's a lot of death. It's really sad, but statistically it's not that much deadlier than the flu. It's deadlier, and should we protect old people? Yes, I've been for that since day one. But there's tons of things we all do that don't give a shit about people's lives. Have you ever driven and have you ever looked at a text message while you were driving? Like that's putting lives in danger. Like we put people's lives in danger all the time. And again, I think it should be your choice, your friend's choice. That's just kind of my mindset is like, we get in these societal pressure, kind of like this is what the group is doing. And if you don't do it, you're an asshole. And I just look at the mask as just one of those things. There's tons of ways that we put people's lives in danger every day, all the time. And the mask is just the new thing now, which again, I don't mind masks, by the way.
Let me jump in because my personality is a debater, right? And so I want to start with this big premise. For me, my core center and my identity, I've I'm quite thankful at this journey in my life, this season. The clarity is I want to make sure I don't compromise on truth.
Yeah.
So, for example, I when we joked about Christmas versus holiday, it's important that everyone know that I'm striving to draw closer to Christ. Like to me, that's a truth. This other stuff, like I have the freedom to have an expressed opinion about things that might be a meaningless controversy and may actually just pass.
Yeah.
And I'm saying when all kinds of darkness and all kinds of noise, I like to be a light on the hill. And if wearing a mask allows me to actually have a conversation with someone about actually how I feel about the futility or lack of logic of it without screaming first at them, I'll take a shot at that. So I've learned a little bit with my massively polarizing personality to work at not already opening the gap of the Grand Canyon more between where I'm at and where someone's at. And so I'm with you. By the way, I like some of the things you said about giving money. You know, for me, Jesus said we're always going to have the poor.
Yeah.
So if you want to invest in widows and orphans, have at it. They're
Yeah.
always going to be here. We're always going to have that. This is going to pass. And when I look at my freedom in leadership, I have, there's a piece of scripture that's really important to me as a leader. I have to say it all the time. Everything is permissible, but is everything beneficial? And so I got to balance that. I'm not caving on my belief of a free market system and my right to make my own decision and express my opinion through vote and all that because if I'm choosing to wear a mask. I think it's a meaningless controversy is my point. And I'm saying I don't think I'm bailing on liberty because I choose to not make that one of the big stances.
Just to be clear, and I agree with that, I'm masked. I view mask as more of just a symbolism, just a way of people just to like act. It's like the one thing they feel like they can contribute to society and give them purpose and meaning to wear a mask. I don't really care about masks either way. Like if people want to wear them, there is a lot of science that says mask can help prevent spread. So I'm not going to deny the science. I'm more of anti-lockdown. If it was, hey, let's keep everything 100% open.
I don't get it.
Yeah,
I
that
hate it.
just so I just
don't get it. It's disappointing. It breaks my heart. I happen to live in a state that's been more open than closed. When I see state, and you do too, right? You live with a governor that's been more open than closed. When I look out at our fellow republic and I see states that are locked down and then people are discussing the shutdown as it relates to our economy, like it breaks my heart. It does. There's other things that are going on with this massive division right now in our time. My son says to me last night, my second born says, Dad, what's happened where anyone who's waving or wearing or having a flag out, why do I have this automatic feeling that assumes that you're for Trump and not for Biden? I'm like, because we're living in a massively divided time where people are so like, if you don't have a group opinion, you have the wrong opinion. It's a really hard time. And that plays right down to this idea of shutdown. And it's not a red or blue thing. It's a divided thought where we can't do what you and I just did, agree to debate and argue and lovingly accept each other. Well, maybe not accept, but be willing to listen to each other's opinions. I would love to hear other people's thoughts that don't end with, remember back when school? It seems like now if I debate or I guess argue with someone who has a different opinion from me, you ever feel like the conversation ends with a mom joke?
Does it?
Well, it's your mom. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. So if I don't actually openly agree with you, then I'm a jerk. You're going to use the mom joke.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, when I was your age, we didn't have, and I'm not meaning old people. We're just cycled in a phase of our generation where mob mentality thinking is prevalent right now. And if you don't go along with that mob thinking, then you are canceled. And that is a dangerous time we're living through. Now, You can look back in cycles of this republic where we've lived through cycles of generations like this. And I'm saying right now, as another openly outspoken leader, no pun intended on purpose, except for it was, we just kind of have to live in that battle. And I don't have any right answers on that. I'm just trying not to make meaningless controversies the thing that I want to stand for.
For sure. And yeah, and again, just to be clear, the mask thing was just more of a symbolism conversation. I'm just anti-lockdown. I mean, Disney just announced a few days ago they're laying off 28,000 people. I mean, the state of Florida is very hospitality based, specifically Orlando, and there's multiple businesses just since you've been here in March that have gone out of business downtown. It's just that's the biggest problem I have, to be clear, is telling these business owners, mostly small bar and restaurant downtown, like mom and pops that like are living week paycheck to paycheck, week by week, that they can't like operate their business at a capacity that allows them to pay their bills, like, and let the people decide if they want to take the risk or not. Like, that's the biggest problem I have, just to be clear.
You're spot on with that. That's painful. A stat that's alarming that, a lot of people aren't looking into some of the information. We're statistically flat on the closures of businesses at this time of the year. Meaning, if you track any given year, you lose between 480 and 580,000 businesses, and each year there might be 530, and then there's 580, and there's 491. We're statistically flat on the number of closures. They're just different ones. And so a free market can actually deal with and solve the problem as it relates to it. When we replace and put government in a position where it's going to make decisions for us as a marketplace, it's where you suddenly start having your honest, fair temper tantrum, because you're right. Like, we shouldn't be shutting this stuff down. And how do you fight the boogeyman?
I don't know.
Like, I get you. I'm like,
yeah.
You want to pull out my underlying core concerns. We're trying to tell people how everyone is supposed to act. Well, tell me in our country when that's ever worked.
And yeah, and I agree. I think the market would solve a lot of it because, my grandma, if all the restaurants, which Florida did, everything opened back to normal in Florida, by the way, except for large gatherings like sporting events, which are open with limited capacity now. But bars and restaurants are back to 100% capacity. You can open up everything back to normal, and I still think there's a giant chunk of the population that's going to say, hey, I'm not quite ready to go out to eat. I'm not quite ready to do these things. And they have the right to do that. They have the right to do that for the rest of their life if they don't feel comfortable for whatever reason to go to this restaurant. But at least allows restaurants to have a fighting chance to keep their business open. And that's all. And, I just...
and by the way, people are straight up. I believe, Jeremy, that it's not just the U.S. When you see that 167 countries are still closed, I actually, don't shut down on me, community. I think there's a fear that's gripping the world. And I think we're under this oppression of fear. And I think that depending on your agenda, you're either choosing to use that to your advantage or you're using it to your advantage. And there's a gripping of fear. And I look forward to the day where this season will pass and we can start to get this grip of fear off not only the U.S., but the world.
I mean, I agree there is a chunk that has fear, but I believe in my heart, and I all the time, I tell everybody in my life this, I go to bed thinking this sometimes. I don't put too much energy into this matter at this point because it's just I don't want to drain my energy for no reason, but we're just on the topic. I believe if it's going to take people like me and my friends, by the way, downtown Orlando has been slammed, like absolutely slammed. You can watch the news and think there's this fear, but, and again, I'm not saying there definitely is a chunk of the population that is scared to go out and maybe should be careful just based on statistics. But it's going to take people like me, my friends that are maybe a little cautious, be like, hey, come on out, join us. It'll be fine. Like we'll make sure no one's sick.
I think you missed my point. I think you missed my point about fear. I agree with you. There are people coming out, young people, but my my son's school. We were a school that opened, and he one of his classmates ended up getting diagnosed positive, and she had a fever. Well, other people got sick, and so Vin developed a cough. Actually, never tested positive for, but had symptomatic stuff of some type of flu, maybe not to the level of the virus, but he went back to school after we kind of self quarantined and just tried to do the right thing and help people. And at the end of it, he's fine and he's not fever. He's no symptoms. Well, he coughed. And so everyone around is looking at him like when I was younger, there was a thing. I don't know if it was when you were younger, but we used to joke and say you had cooties. And we would say, oh, if you have cooties, you're like this thing.
We had cooties in the 90s, Vinny, just to be clear. They existed.
What's that?
Cooties made it up to the 90s, just to be clear. So yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I remember joking with Vin the other day about this concept. And he's like, Dad, that's exactly what's happening. When I speak to fear, I'm not fear like everyone's staying inside. But there's this, we are thinking differently about epidemiology and spread and all this stuff where people are just being sheep. They're just following along stuff. That's what I'm afraid of. And that where's where it rubs along some of your ideological stuff. By the way, some good things may have come out of this and a lot of behavioral changes because we've been doing it for so long now. There are going to be new habits. So back into business, like having a discussion here with leaders, new habits have created. Sorry, I'm without apology because it's been so long. We are watching in direct to consumer if every category is up. So what used to be the rules in direct to consumer are changing.
Yeah.
Before it used to be we need to adopt eyeballs. Now you have the eyeballs. So we need to worry about cash flow, not going negative on a customer. Like rules are changing. How to make a hybrid office work or no office work. Like habit has impacted our lives in a way that whether or not we agree with it, it is going to change and maybe in some cases accelerate where you and I were heading in our digital marketplace.
For sure. And I don't even mind being a minority with some of these things because just look at some of the biggest issues in world history. I mean, it's going to take, and not like this isn't an ego statement, but people like me that are just like, hey, we got to live our life. Life is about risks. Just move forward and eventually people are going to follow. But it wasn't until the 1800s that we had a civil war to get rid of slavery. I mean, most civilized countries in the 16s, 17s, up until the 1800s, even 1900s, a majority of the country thought slavery was okay. I mean, and not even 100 years ago in World War II, majority of Germany thought it was okay to just slaughter a bunch of Jews. Like the history has shown us that majority think that doesn't mean it's the right way of thinking, and I think that, and this is, I'm not comparing.
Oh, by the way, and first off, I'm not even sure it's majority. It's a loud mob that creates this perception that it's a majority. So we got to be real careful in swings in history.
That's true.
Whether or not it's a majority mob or a minority mob that creates this like momentum of groupthink. And, I hope that our republic is strong enough to withstand this level of division. There are times in history where countries, including ours, can look at where division led to massive conflict. And I think we're in one of those right now. Look back 50 years ago, with the days I was born, we were in the middle of a very similar version of division in this country in the early 70s. And here we are again, repeating aspects of that with just now a different enemy.
Yeah, and when you say division, I'm also one of those people that you can say I'm in my bubble here, whatever, but I don't think that division is as bad in real life as what social media and the news makes it seem. I mean, Orlando is a very, very, very diverse community. People from South America, Hispanic community, Black community. We have a large LGBT community here in Central Florida. Like, we're very diverse. I mean, I've been going downtown. I can tell you when people are just dancing at the bar of every color, no one gives a shit. Like that.
No, by the way, you're spot on with that.
That's
Like,
that's how you that's how you get rid of the divisiveness. By the way, is open up
by
the
the way,
bars. Everybody's
that
so friendly.
divisiveness, I agree with you in that, like the progressive issues that as a society we've advanced through, like civil unions, same-sex marriage, workplace, kind of all those things that we've progressed as a society, we're not unwinding those things. So the fact that we're like fearing up those things to create controversy is literally like creating controversy. Are we divided on certain things, and is there a loud, noisy thing being made inside of the rhetoric of media? Well, you know the old adage, if it bleeds, it leads. So if they don't create some controversy, no one watches.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can't sit around and have at the grassroots level. If I was out in my office, I was just on this big CEO consortium thing. I'm going to probably get a few haters for this, but I got to ask the question. You know how when the Christian raises his hand and says he's trying to follow Christ, everyone dialed right in on him and asked some hard questions. He's like, what are you doing to mandate racism stuff in your office? I'm like, I'm going to be honest with you. We live a rather transparent office. We open, we survey, we talk. It's actually, I have strong women leading in areas. It's actually not a divisive issue in my office. So why am I trying to create it as one? Why am I being required to create division of something that doesn't exist? And so here I stand to say, like, what? Because people are requiring certain discussions? Like, haven't we as an honest society progressed through some of those things? And people are like, well, it's easy to say as a white guy. I'm like, wait a minute. Like that, because I'm openly wanting to stand against oppression, hate, supremacy, because in one case I agree with standing against that, I'm fine. And the second that I say I don't see signs of it in my immediate environment, now all of a sudden I'm a hater. I can't win. If I pick one position, there's going to be a group of haters, which is why I told you 18 minutes ago or whatever that I just don't want to compromise on truth. What I'm going to do is stand strong on the things that need to be stood strong on. And this whim is a bad word. I apologize for anyone who got upset with me on that. If this swing in our society is dealing with stuff that maybe some issues we need to deal with and improve, and other ones are just not actually an accurate reflection of where we are as a society, then people like you and I have to stand firm in the faith, and we have to stand strong for what we know we're doing, and don't be like the man who goes and looks in the mirror and walks away and forgets what he looks like. People don't know what they stand for anymore. I would love it if more people were clear with their intentions and clear with their things and not just following along. But the reality is, as a leader, I have to accept some things that hurt people, that 95% of people need to follow someone else.
Yeah, and I agree with that a lot too, actually, is I just want people to be informed and to spend a little bit of their time looking at data when it comes to things, looking at just actual facts and statistics, and not just, and then if we disagree, then I'm probably going to learn something new. You're just going to say, hey, well, this is the other side. This is the data on this. And it's like, that's a great point. But when it's just thinking because everybody else is thinking and you don't even know why you're thinking the way you're thinking, I agree. I just think that's what causes more divisiveness. If someone knows their shit and they don't agree with me at all, but they're telling me, hey, this is the data, this is what supports my opinion, I will leave 100% of those conversations with probably a slightly shifted opinion because they're able to share facts and data. I can't argue that. But when it's just like, hey, this is the way that we need to think, and if you don't think this, you're part of the problem. You're a racist. You just want grandma to die. Just all these things. It's just like that. Like, do you know?
You want to know
data?
what breaks my heart?
Yeah.
You want to know one of the things when I just look at our republic that breaks my heart? I believe with you about the shutdown stuff. By the way, I 100%, I'm like, you already knew that, but I'm a free market guy. One of the things that actually breaks my heart is the trained lawyer in me. I really am quite thankful for our system where we have like the Bill of Rights which are the first 10 amendments to our Constitution.
Yeah.
What I'm actually concerned about is that what people are doing to trade in liberty and freedom in response for protection. And what I mean by that is people don't think they're giving up things. And what I'm afraid of is when we wake up, people will have given up more freedom and liberty because they don't actually think they're giving up something until it's personal in nature. Right? So there's some arguments about security and police and things. Until it's secure in nature to where it actually impacts you directly, you don't believe you're giving something up. And so I think when we cycle through this phase of our society and we come on the other side of it, every conflict results in one of two things: a correction in one direction. What's this correction going to look like? Will we have given up more liberty and freedom in result for protection? And as the lawyer in me, looking at the dilution of freedom and liberty, I'm probably most brokenhearted about that as it relates to our governmental society, maybe even more than sometimes the business stuff, because the business stuff may have just accelerated businesses that should have been closing anyway.
Potentially.
Maybe we were changing some of the societal ways we do business. But what breaks my heart is now I've added more power into a category that otherwise shouldn't have existed.
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. The police one is really interesting to me right now because it's not even it's a bunch of woke white people that are fighting to defund the police more than anything. Like most, like 90, like a lot of studies show that like 90% of people in the black community want the same amount or increased policing. It's a bunch of woke white people. Like that's the craziest thing that's going on in society is it's a bunch of people with shame that don't have purpose in life, that are just, they get this like fake purpose and fulfillment from pretending to act good, but they're not even like having conversations. And again, yeah, it's the like
if we listen to massively respected black leaders, they're actually discussing another subject. They're discussing the brokenness of the family and the absence of a father in their homes. They're not discussing police. Now, there's a rhetoric, there's a police agenda, there's a political stuff going on with that, some of that subject. And are there untrained people in positions? That's true in digital agencies that you compete with. That's true of accountancy. People's lives are at stake with poor training. There's also lots of death outside of that. But if we listen to massively respected pastors, civil leaders who are men that are black, they're telling you, why don't we actually fight the epidemic of fatherless families more and put our money behind that issue so that we can generationally change not only a poverty mindset, but a broken home, which leads to, 80% of our prisons are filled with men and women who have fatherless homes. We have an epidemic in this country that's the worst. No one's talking about that issue. It's easier to have talking points about external ones instead of internal ones.
Yeah, and Vinny, and I don't know if you know this about me, maybe. I'm agnostic atheist, but what I do appreciate about many religious households is the importance of the family unit. So I do agree with the importance of that because, my parents were divorced growing up, and it's a non-ideal outcome. And like, even if they do their best, having that family unit is so important because only one person can only do so much financially, time-wise, leadership-wise, right? Leadership's been an important thing. I didn't live with my dad growing up, so I feel like I got leadership from my mom, but I was lacking it from the male side, which had a young guy needs typically a good father if he can have it, right? So it's all those things, and I do agree with you there. I want to ask you real quick too. I want to take a little pivot. Your mentee,
yeah, let's do it, man.
Your mentee that you have now, and I agree with you, by the way. I have some great older guys in my life that care about me, and just I love asking questions and getting life knowledge from. What motivates you to invest your time in this young guy? Like what do you, not in a selfish way, but what do you get out of it to make you want to do it?
Man, I'll tell you something. There's a secret, and you just hit upon it. I actually get more out of it than he does.
Tell me how.
Like we only have, yeah, so we only have so many limited days. And as the clock continues to tick, my hours are far less than yours, statistically speaking. No promises, but statistically speaking, that's a true statement. And we have a 20-year gap in our age. That statistically will play out where in the next season, I look at business in seasons, right? And in me, my definition of a season is about 5 years. And I've noticed in the cycles of business that there's a first and second half to the season. There's like that 2.5, 3 years, and that 2.5, 3 years, and it all plays out in a season. Well, in the kind of pursuit of growth and all the things that go along with business growth, what do I have? At best 2 seasons left, maybe 1.5. So, and what's going to cycle through is the next people in the season. And so my ability to walk along someone else and be a shepherd in someone else's field is so massively rewarding because I'm also being taught, as you know, scripture is important to me. And there was a relationship between Paul and this guy, Timothy. Well, Timothy was like basically a young teenager, and Paul was like an old dude. Well, Paul was learning from him all the time in their mentoring role. It went both directions, and it was journeying in life together. And so, what I get out of coming into someone else's pasture is helping them walk in their pasture, like
Yeah.
where they're going to go. And it's so rewarding. It's literally, I had to learn how to receive a compliment. You ever have a problem receiving a compliment from somebody?
Of course, that's a human problem is receiving compliments.
I think it's a problem of people who are hard chargers and givers. And actually, one of the things that I was robbing in being able to receive a compliment was someone's way to relate to me. And someone nailed me on it coming off the stage on a big speech I was giving. He's like, yeah, you really deflect compliments. And I'm like, he's like, that's a shame because you're robbing someone the opportunity to draw closer to you. And I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's the exact discussion we're having about why I think it's important to pay forward, in some cases, forward being the next generation or the next generation.
That's fantastic. And I do agree. And I'm starting, there's a couple younger people in my life. My brother's been one and just other people that, and I agree that does come up. And I think that's kind of the transition I'm going through is just starting to mentor more people and not just be mentored. But on the compliment thing, that's really, really important too. And it's something, I mean, how many times will someone be like, hey, you look great, or that dress looks great? Like, hey, it's nothing. I just whatever. Like, you look great too.
This
Like,
whole thing,
you deflect it, and you feel obligated to reciprocate. And in that time, you never even take notice to the fact that somebody just gave you a loving compliment because you
well,
deflect.
this lovely lady who gave me this critique, she's awesome. She's someone I look up to and respect, and she nailed me with this. And I actually said, well, what do you do with that? She goes, how about thank you? Instead of like trying to push it back. Why can't we be socially a little bit obligated to our neighbor? I'm like, that's a really good point. Why does it have to be a quid pro quo? Why can't someone draw closer to me with a compliment? And I'm like, gosh darn it, that's true. There are some indebtedness that's appropriate. Like the indebtedness of love is a real thing. I love Jeremy. I want to be on his show. I want to support him. When he says kind things to me, I can say thank you so that our audience can feel embraced and connected. And I have an indebtedness of love back to Jeremy to be kind, show up, try to wear a collared shirt, maybe brush my hair or the 2 hairs I have on my head, shine my bald head, do things to be kind. And there's an indebtedness. Well, if we don't actually receive stuff from people, then I think we are breaking some of those social obligations. And in my shame, in my lack of identity, I was awful at it. Awful. Like D minus, probably F plus type stuff. And I'm so thankful I got confronted about that because I'm so much better at the awareness of compliment and where it belongs in relationship.
Why is it so hard, Vinny? Like, why is it in so many areas of life? Like, oh, you're doing great with your business. Ah, it's doing okay. Like, why, why is it so hard for us humans to just take a compliment and be like, you know what, that was a nice thing for them to say. I have put a lot of work into this business, like, or whatever it
So,
is.
so for me, so for me, I have a clear answer. So for me, as I stand here as a child of God, if I look in deficit, I don't have a relationship to the value of me. I have a shame thing. And one of the indicators I had to realize is I was so hard on myself. I'm so pushing. I give myself the most benefit of the doubt, but I'm the hardest on myself and not forgiving myself, not like that duplicity lives. And when someone wants to say something nice about me, the person is really hard on myself, not loving myself, not being forgiving is like, whoa, you don't know. There's an internal like back off. I'm not worthy of that compliment. That's a really unhealthy thing because I can't stand there. Same thing like when someone says, how's your business doing? Right now, there's a societal division as to who's doing well and who's not. Digital businesses seem to be progressing along stronger than ones who aren't. And so I should say to you, by the way, we're like doubling in size and we're growing at every category. I'm quite thankful for that. That's really is the truth of what's happening. And I don't have to live ashamed of that true reality. And I got to try to find a way to be compassionate towards someone who isn't in that reality, but that doesn't change the one I'm in. Like that's the funny relationship to that. But what if I lived ashamed or I'm like not living truthful? All of a sudden, that this feeling I have about myself shows up in my ability to accept a compliment from somebody.
Yeah. Do you think society makes being successful and by the way, like I'm libertarian. It's where I identify. There's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
I don't agree with that the conservatives stand for. But one thing I feel like I'm really annoyed with in the Democratic Party in 2020 is they like vilify success and wealth. Like, why do you think we just feel guilty for just having things that other people don't have, and it's kind of like the best way to not feel guilty is to not acknowledge that we're doing well. Like, does that ever come up for you where it's just like you just kind of, I feel like it's in 2020, it's kind of, you don't tell everybody you're doing well, because some people are going to take it the wrong way. Some people are going to get envious and get jealous and think you're bragging. And in all actuality, it's just like, hey, I just worked really hard and I'm proud of myself and I'm not trying to brag. But like, what do you feel like? I feel in society, it's almost a bad thing in 2020 to be successful. And I think that's part of as successful at anything. And that's part of the reason why we may have challenges accepting compliments as well.
So, there was this time when we used to travel. And back a year ago, Deb and
Yeah.
I, in travel, we had a chance to go to the communist bloc of Eastern Europe. And I thought some things I learned there in post-communist era about communism in the Eastern Bloc was astounding to me. And one of those things a factoid that I learned was that, do you know the percentage of people statistically that travel, like what that is out of 100%?
It's probably very small, I would guess. Under
Yeah, it's
10%.
10%.
Okay.
And when you look at North American and our abundance and prosperity, we're a point and a half, maybe two statistically. We're like 12%, maybe 10%. So here's what's interesting. The number one issue that plagued people in communist countries was the depression around the right to travel, meaning their passports were taken from them, and the actual freedom of the right to travel made the country massively depressed. But 9 out of 10 people didn't travel anyway. But they were the restriction of their freedom caused them to be massively depressed. Let's now take some of that, like how we think as people, and layer over top of. Listen, there's lots of businesses that did nothing wrong. Imagine if the governor of Ohio got online and said, "Hey, the virus is in the computer. Don't log in." Guess what? Me and a lot of other people, probably you included, would be having a tough time right now. Most people pre all this would have said, bet on local, it's safer than on digital. It's just where they were on stuff. The fact that the line was drawn in the sand and we've massively progressed does have some societal implications. But like people aren't, we have other divisions that are going on. And honestly, like this guilt factor stuff, I think there's some truth in that. I think there is. I was reading an article this morning in LinkedIn that talked about the wealth in American households is up, even though the jobless rates are also up. We've closed sectors of our economy. But if you look at the salary productions of the ones that aren't, they're going up. How do you reconcile that? We are the most abundant. There's no poverty in America. You have running water and a roof over your head, you're not poor. We have an impoverished mindset. We have poverty thinking in our country, but we don't actually have real poverty.
I agree with that completely. I mean, I talk about it all the time. When you don't actually have serious problems, our brains just look to create them. And not saying we can't always look to grow and improve. There's never one day where I wake up and say, oh, my business is where I want it to be. I'm good. I can just never do anything again. Like, or I'm as where I want to be as a human. I don't need to grow. Like, we can always learn to grow and better ourselves. But at the same time, I do think it's important we acknowledge what you just said, which is in America. And I've traveled to Ukraine. I spent a month at an orphanage out there. I've spent time twice. I've been to Cuba. I've been to Guatemala for a while. I mean, I've been to really poor countries. Like, it makes you really appreciate what we have here in America. And I do agree. Our poorest people are, middle and upper class in Cuba. Like seriously, like
Yep. Yep.
you think Cuba just has all like these, they do have free education and healthcare, which is a little misleading, and we can debate the quality of it. It's free, but is it quality? But do you think they have like all these government programs to give kids food, and there's even safety measures in place to make sure the food is quality? Like, we went to this market when I was in Cuba, like it's probably like 30 minutes outside of Havana, where like the tourist area is, and there's just raw meat sitting out there in the sun. There's no regulation to just like, hey, we should probably refrigerate this or have some ice on it, or like there's none of that in place. Like, it's just, there's not lines on the road. There's no like emissions or regulations. So, like, I'm just downtown and just black smoke from every 70-year-old car just blowing in my face. I mean, there's just so many little things. It's just like, we do live in a pretty good spot. So do you see where
your point you're making there is amazing. I don't know if it's guilt or lack of perspective. So, having had the privilege to travel to other countries and very poor ones and see, I think that because 9 out of 10 people don't travel, they lack the perspective of where we sit in relation to our own world versus the rest of the world. And so is there wealth guilt? I maybe, right? Because they lack perspective. But when you see like that we invest money in postal system and trash collection and roads and electric and civilized forms of government, like, holy cow. Okay, could our system improve? I mean, you hand a man power, what does he want? More power.
Yeah.
It's just the axiom of man on this earth. Like, could we go ahead and add better improvements to education? Sure. Could we make investments in certain areas of our economy where it's helping more people? Absolutely. What I'm really worried about as we evaluate what stuff we should improve is removing out risk reward. If I want to take some risks, where's my opportunity to be rewarded for that? So everyone's like participation trophies, everyone finishes second, like all these crazy stuff where there's no risk and reward is not a society that people want to live in. Look at China as an honest example. They had a revolution that led to a communist government, and now people live oppressed. It's how it goes in the swings of revolution. And, someday, I hate to say it, but someday our country is going to face a level of revolution that leads to a change of the system.
I mean, the biggest difference, there's a lot of big differences, but it's just crazy to think about. What perspective, I believe, that's probably the most important word. And I agree with that. Like, we have the freedom of speech in this country. You talked about the Bill of Rights. Like, we're allowed to shit on. If you don't like Trump, you can talk bad about him. You don't like Obama, you don't like Bush, you don't like Clinton, you can say bad things. You can say he has COVID, I hope he dies, and you're not in jail. You imagine, like, there's a country of China, over 1 billion people. They don't have those freedoms to say same thing about their leaders. I mean, people
President Xi, imagine Jeremy's equivalent in China doing his best to help people, getting on and having a strong opinion about President Xi, and like he's getting arrested.
Yeah, and I mean, we have people saying that Trump has COVID, like, I hope he dies. And again, that's the freedom of speech. That's such a beautiful thing that it protects that. And like that is one of the best things that, like, a bunch of guys in the 1700s were like, hey, we're going to make this the First Amendment. Freedom of speech. You can talk shit about whatever you want because we know how important that is. And you even look at, like, I just saw a video recently of Merkel in Germany. You know, she was talking about how she's not for freedom of speech because freedom of speech means you can have hate speech. And it's like, that's the whole point of freedom of speech, is be able, like, how do we classify hate speech? And like Germany, who's a country that does a lot of things really well. I think there's a lot of ways that US could learn from Germany. They're very clean. They're anti-freedom of speech. I mean, that's one of the greatest things that we have left going in this country. It's just we can say,
well, it broke my heart what's going on in Germany. That really actually saddened me when Deb and I were there last year, is this removal of talk about the past as it relates to the Holocaust. Like, there's a generation of people being raised as if it didn't exist because you can't talk about it. So when I see like statues being removed and like wanting to whitewash history, and that's a really bad pun, but wanting to clear out a version of history, well, then we're destined to repeat it because we're not going to remember what not to do. And those things kind of, are definitely concerning, right? And I see that happening in Germany now, ever more present than ever.
I agree. And I feel like for me, history is where I learn the most about all these subjects. And if a statue can start a conversation and be like, man, that was fucked up 100 years ago. People did this to your ancestors. Like, what the hell, man? I'm sorry. Like, I want to make sure, like, if that statue's not there, if this history isn't there to even have the conversation, then yeah. I mean, think about another generation or two of my kids, my grandkids, if a lot of this stuff isn't even being discussed, and the hard conversations, controversial stuff, right? Like, not maybe the friendliest conversations to have, but it's necessary. Why wouldn't it happen again? I mean, like, seriously, like.
So I'll tell you what's really awesome that's going on in my little community, and I'm coaching up my wife and coworkers and kids about, is like, what can we do to impact the neighbor that's in front of you, the person like? How can we actually, like, today, my goal, my prayer this morning is like, allow my words and my actions to be glorifying and loving, so that the words of someone here are encouraging and uplifting, so they're beneficial to their needs. And I've noticed that if I let someone speak a little bit, no difference in leadership, if they can have some identity in why they made a decision as opposed to just being a robot of my decision, or I can hear someone's position and do my best to be compassionate and empathetic, hearing them out, gosh darn it, people feel like they're entitled or allowed to have their own opinion. Where there is no one listening, everyone is just talking. And I need to be slow to speak and quick to listen, because I have an opinion about everything. And I'm quick to speak on every subject, which is why I can get up at your mastermind and speak about a subject on moment's notice, because I'm a boy with a strong opinion about a lot of things. And gosh darn it, if leaders like you and I, who have a lot of people watching and following, if we can show everyone else an empathetic ear and a compassionate heart and actually convey loving aspects in a very conflict-laden time, I think we're going to come out of this certainly on firmer ground for ourselves, And then secondly, the people that you will have impacted around you will be by nature improved by that love.
Yeah, I align with that completely, and I also have an opinion on a lot of stuff. That's one of the reasons I started this show. So yeah, I think that's an area I continue to get better at, but I have a lot of room for growth. Is just doing a little more listening and a little less talking,
Well, you're
staying a little
super
bit more
kind. Like
curious.
you are a, when you like take the mic away, you and I are friends. You are a very kind person. I love debating with you because we don't yes each other. Like so earlier, you said you're an agnostic atheist. The idea of an atheist, like in my world, doesn't exist because people
Yeah,
believe in something.
yeah.
You believe in something, right?
Atheism
So
is a faith, by the way. Atheism is a faith. I
yeah,
have to believe that. So it is. I'm kind of confused and uncertain. That's what I talked about on my last show. So I'll be honest about that. But yeah,
yeah. So
it is
you
a
believe
faith.
in something.
Yeah.
So it's a nullity. It doesn't feed on itself. But and so with that, but like look how like friends we are. Does it matter whether or not like I am or am not following Christ and where you are like in our relationship? Like we care about each other. We're leading in business. We're trying to help other people get a competitive edge to lead well and do things. And gosh darn it, I would love a little more of this right now and a little less of people just yelling at each other.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you not yelling at me, Vinny, for being an atheist.
Well, I just don't believe one exists. I
Yeah.
believe you believe in something. So how can
No,
I yell at you about
no.
something I don't think exists?
That's the thing about. You know what I don't like about atheists is there's the atheist. I don't that push their atheism beliefs on people. You know what I'm talking about? I'm like,
Yeah,
just
I
don't
know.
push your belief. Like, just because an atheism is a faith. If anything, it's more faith than. And I've heard people say this before, and I do agree. But it's still what I most categorize myself at. It's more faith than many modern religions because at least Christianity has the Bible. I mean, there's at least like evidence that Jesus existed. Like atheism, I'm really, really having some faith like because there's like no evidence of anything, it's like it's a bunch of theories and like most likely in scientific statistics and stuff. But yeah, atheism is definitely a big time
So
faith.
in the logic parallel of like when you sit for the LSATs and you go into training and lawyering, one of the things you deal with is the result of how negative is as an answer to something. And what I've always found ironic with an atheist argument is how he or she is so quick to point out the negative parallels of someone else's belief as opposed to what's the positive thing of what they actually choose to believe because it fills itself. If you are someone who claims to say you're an atheist, but you don't stand on the position of what you believe, well, you've undermined the belief that you don't believe. So you can't have that. So your argument has to be a negative one, and it's filled with all the things as to why someone's wrong in what they believe. It's a rather ironic thing. It's a fun thing to discuss when we're not like arguing, and I love it. But it shouldn't undermine having a relationship. When all of a sudden someone's conviction, what we're doing in business, in leadership, family, my wife, my kids, when all of a sudden like what I stand for in the something that might be controversial, I make that a division of friendship. I don't care if you're Christian or not. That's a problem of man. And
Yeah.
we have a problem where we divide based on certain principles. And that, man, I haven't found a good philosopher all the way up to me, the priesthood of priesthood and Jesus. I haven't found anybody who's ever said, like, you staying hard nosed on your principles is the best way to do it.
Yeah, and what you just said is 2020 in a nutshell, by the way. And I never thought of that about atheism, but a lot of it is just shitting on other people's beliefs, not even being. And that's 2020. Like people that are hating on capitalism. It's like, okay, you can hate on capitalism. What's the alternative? What do you believe in? That's the better solution. Like I'd be down to hear that. Then I'm like, okay, may not agree, but this
Yeah,
is like a good
love that.
solution. But I feel like that's what's going on a lot. Is like this is the bad thing about your beliefs. I don't have my own beliefs, and I'm not confident in my own beliefs to even share them. But this is the bad thing about your beliefs, and you're a bad person because of it. So that's 2020 in a nutshell, right there.
Buddy, I think it is. This interesting thing we're watching, it's like a sociology experiment, right? So I'm always intrigued by the behavior of people. And I think that's actually what's made me a quite good marketer in my career. I'm always intrigued by behavioral reasons people make decisions. This whole idea of this minority mob that's got a majority of thought process, where it's like, I guess we're calling it the cancel culture, if you don't agree with me, is certainly one for the generation. It's an interesting, it breaks my heart how it's leading to at least the perception of division, if not real division. But boy, it's a powerful force right now.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. It is a loud minority, and they're so loud because extremists are loud. Because when you're extreme, you're just passionate. Like, there's so many things that you and I probably have beliefs on that we're just like, I'm not gonna go down to the courthouse and rally, like, because it's maybe not just affecting my life, or I have other stuff going on. I'm trying to run my business. I'm not like, I don't have the time and energy to spend the next 3 weeks marching about this topic, but there's a group of people that are passionate about it, and they have a lot of free time, and they're going to be really loud about it when everybody else is just trying to live their life, and they paint a really large picture.
Because I can't help but debate, I have to then also accept, like, rewind parts of our conversation where you would have been like, hey, well, then why don't you give all your money? Why don't you do all this? Well, if we really do care about some of those principles and those are that important to us, then why aren't we showing up at the courthouse steps and doing those things? Like, it's a very interesting.
We don't care about it that much. That's the point. Or we would take action. And
right?
The people, this minority of people do, and like, we can disagree with their logic, but they, you can respect their passion, which again, I'll try to find positivity in what they're doing. They're passionate about something. They're taking, but like, there's a lot of beliefs. I think all drugs should be legal, but I'm not marching on the street for it. I just don't care that much, even though it would make a big difference in a lot of people's lives, especially it'd get people out of prison that have committed nonviolent crimes. There's a lot of reason that, but when it comes down to it, there's so many things in life we just have opinions on, and it just takes a lot of energy and effort to take action. And I obviously just don't care about it enough to, and I'll admit to myself, I'll be honest. I'll be honest with myself, because who else should I be honest with? I care about it enough to share an opinion with you right now and talk with my friends sometimes. I don't care about it enough at this point in my life to take more action. Maybe at some point I will, but right now I just care about kind of like looking out for myself and my business and doing what's in my lane, and I'll just have an opinion in the meantime. I wanted to get to one more topic, Vinny. I know something you're very opinionated on, and then it relates to Fully Accountable too, which is great. You're big about financial fluidity. Is that fluency? Financial fluency. Is fluidity even a word? I didn't go to college, Vinny, as you can tell.
Fluidity is. Hey, by the way, I have an actual belief on words. If the person receiving the word from you understood it, it counts as a word.
Okay. Bam. So financial fluency. Why are so many young people and business owners and people, and like, why are we so bad with finances?
There's probably a few fair answers, and I'll share my own story. Like, I'm good at marketing, good at sales. I've been successful in kind of looking ahead at what I think fills a value proposition and sell stuff to people. And I'm a trained lawyer. I just never signed up for some of the business parts. And the language of business is finance. And what I never did is spend any time learning at least the basic elements as a leader that were necessary for that component of my business. And so what I did is I focused on growing more affiliate sales, more gross revenue, cutting out business deals. And I never looked at the value as it relates to the profit margin of those deals. And I broke an 8-figure company that would have and should have created generational wealth for the Fisher Empire, because it kind of had no relationship to finances. And here's what's funny. It's habit. All the gunslinger things I had to do to get that business from 6 figures into 7 figures are different than the habits I need to take a 7-figure into 8-figure business. Process and people are critical to 7-figure businesses. Now listen up, everybody. You need to know some stats. 7%. Less than 7% of all companies do $1 million of annualized revenue. So when you get there, the habit of breaking what got you there is so important because now you need to work on process and improvement. There's slight edge things, not 10x things that are important to you. You'll resonate with 10x and the six-figure thing, but some of that has to turn to 2 and 3x. Well, if I don't have a relationship to profit margin and my only relationship's to gross revenue, then I'm going to give it all back. And I've done that multiple times. And so when I look at leaders who have at least a cocktail napkin relationship to finance, where they understand key indicators that are important to them in that business, in their industry, then they'll start resonating with things like it's not the top line that pays you, it's what's left in your pocket. And so my health supplement company that we had was doing 8% in profit margin. I had come to find out that it should have been doing 20%. So instead of being excited about 8%, I suddenly was upset that my leaky bucket was losing 12 points. And I was consumed with where were those 12 points going? Labor, supply chain, too expensive to acquire the customer. And by me being aware of those things, I could lead the people, including our back office, through that. I cared so much about this. Again, at that same fullyaccountable.com your gift page is, why is that blanking my mind? I have it sitting right here.
I'll put it in
outspoken, the show, duh.
I'll put it in the show notes for everybody. All Vinny's contact info will be there.
I literally wrote an entire book about my journey into this. The biggest problem were some of the things that were eating me alive. Like 42 cents of every dollar in digital and commerce is spent trying to acquire the customer. And it's 4 to 10% too high. And we were trained early on in direct to consumer, do whatever you can to get a customer. Well, now that the world has kind of reset the deck, we got to go challenge some of our habits as to what we're doing to acquire the customer and where's profit margin, where's cash flow, because those things are going to set apart brands who are going to succeed from the ones who are not. And the funny thing is, I'm not asking you to be a CFO. I'm asking you to have just enough understanding to be able to lead the people on your team so that you can be more aware and not so afraid of these terms. I'm still awful at those terms, but I'm not afraid of them because I value profit margin now.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, and that's we've learned the hard way. I've learned the hard way on that in all my businesses. Unfortunately, we have my little brother now who is really acts as our CFO for our company.
Awesome.
He's a really smart guy. He's been working with me since he was about 17, so he's been getting business experience, and then he got his finance degree a couple years ago, and that's just he's a numbers guy where me and Max are big visionary strategy, me relationships. So
yeah,
it's super important, man. I mean, what?
I don't know how a good mature company doesn't have a CFO. And now that the deck has been changed, why any business wouldn't have at least a fractional CFO within their category. Like somebody has to wake up every day caring about the profit margin. And how can I expect our organization, if I don't care about it or anyone else, to actually have any relationship to the money we keep? So I had to take an honest assessment. I have to care about it, and I have to empower someone else to make sure it's their only job that everything else revolves around.
Yeah, 100%. And do you know, to add to that, and this is just supports your case, this is why hiring a team like Vinny's is, or Vinny would probably even tell you either hire somebody good internally or hire a team like you. We would promote all these different affiliate products and we would do well with them, but we didn't have somebody like tracking, checking in, making sure we were getting paid out, some of them have longer click attributions. We get percentage of upsells. So we thought our payout was already collected, but in all actuality, we earn an extra few grand on that push. And we don't even realize because we're not staying on top of it because we didn't have that person that all they're doing every day is staying on top of that. So it just, F's up the whole flow of our business. We could have been more aware and clear on, hey, these are the areas that are actually making us the most profit, but because we didn't have somebody, just all they were doing is spending time. Because when you're promoting, we're an affiliate for tons of different tools. We'd promote 20 or 30 different tools. It's a full-time job just to track all that stuff, you know?
Oh,
And
and by the way, I'm a little scared of this like dashboard mentality, but you made me think of a story. You know, Ryan Dice and Perry and Roll and all those guys, they have that traffic and conversion. Well, in the early days, they used to give out an award for Marketer of the Year. Well, I was a 2-time recipient of that award, and I'm walking towards the stage with my business partner, and Mark and I are walking on our way up to go get that award. And I leaned over to Mark and said, wouldn't it be hilarious if this audience knew when we were half the size, we were more profitable?
did you tell them?
No, probably because in my shame category identity, I was being rewarded for gross sales, not what we kept. And I didn't have a good relationship to the bottom. The most loving thing I could have done then, if I was capable, would have been to share that. But I tell you the real part of the story. There was no addition, get up on stage and go, hey, we do great at growing revenue. We just don't keep any of it. Like it just didn't fit within the narrative. But
Yeah.
you know, when I look at that story, I am honest and take an assessment that the businesses that we grew in 8 figures and broke 100% at my feet, not some person who didn't pay attention to that. I had this like automation dashboard mentality that Easter bunny of finance just kind of happens. And I think if you're an honest leader of a 7+ figure business and you aren't looking at process improvement in every area of your company, I think that's on you, not on the rest of the team.
I would agree with that, and that's kind of the point that we're at in our business. I mean, we haven't talked too much about what Unicorn's up to, but we're busier than ever, man. We're really grateful. We're working with a handful of some big brands as an affiliate. We have our Proud Patriots, which is our conservative leaning collectibles business that's doing really well. So, revenue and profit wise, the last couple quarters have been great. 2020 has been great. Q4 is going to be our most profitable quarter in my history as a business owner.
Congrats,
so
bud.
I'm really excited about that. Yeah, my goal is to buy a house on the water by end of next year in Florida here. So we'll see if we hit the targets that we believe are. And what I told the team, by the way, and I have one good idea a month, Vinny. 99 of my ideas are bad, but I just have one. And I was like, do you like the Last Dance documentary? Michael Jordan went into the season, and I have respect for that. If he didn't win the NBA title, it was a failure. It's not like, oh wow, we won. I'm like, guys, if we don't hit these targets, this is a fucking failure. I'm like, who deserves it more than us? Who does things the right way? Who's committed to growth? Who puts as much time and energy to make their company the best they can? Like, we deserve it. We've worked so hard. We've done things the right way. We, just treat people with respect. We treat our team with respect. We are giving all the time. Like, if anybody deserves to hit these numbers, it's us. So I'm like, if we don't hit these targets for Q4, that's going to be a disappointment. And that's where I was.
Now, I will say it, just to put a little rounding on that, this concept of an entrepreneurial gap is a dangerous thing. So for me, how that played out in my life was I set out to lose 25 pounds once back in the day, and I lost 20 pounds. And I saw myself as a loser because I didn't get to 25.
Yeah.
I watched that resonate in our business where our goal would be to 2 or 3x the company, and maybe we'd 1.87x, which is ridiculous growth in any category and how you measure it against business success. I've had to learn to live in both, like stretch goal, want to get there, accept and celebrate what we were able to get to, definitely call out where we checked up short on what we could have done better on, but be careful. Both sides are important. Like, celebrate a part of that big win because it's part of the accomplishment.
For sure. And again, that's I'm fortunate to just have some great mentors and coaches. I write down regularly what I'm grateful for, but I'm also always looking to improve. So I'm taking a step to be grateful. Like I write down so many times. I've wrote down I'm grateful just to have a nice pool. I'm grateful to have sunlight in Florida. I'm grateful to be.
You do have a nice pool.
I saw my pool. Yeah, you saw my.
Nice
yeah,
pool.
I forgot you saw the pool.
And you get to stare at it, looking down. It's nice.
Did you ever come up to my actual apartment? Did you come into my apartment or just in the building?
You tried to invite me there for a romantic interlude, but I
Yeah.
wasn't able to make it.
I had a bottle of wine ready to go, Vinny. I just drank it myself. No, I'm just kidding. But is there anything else
All right,
that?
hey, listen, we got to put the landing gear down on this show. I have to leave you shortly.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's what I was just about to
let's
say. You beat me to the punch. From a framing standpoint, since I'm the host, I'll say I'm ending the show. So, all right, Vinny,
excellent.
we're gonna we're gonna bring this to an end here. I know you're a busy guy running a company here. Is there anything else that you wanted to share or promote before we bounce?
I just want to encourage people that, something I've noticed is that regardless of where you sit on this, people need routine. And right now, every day people are waking up having to create new routine. And so lots of people are unsettled. Your people you lead, maybe yourself. Don't give up. My job as a leader every day is to help to try to establish some versions of routine for myself and for everyone else. And I recognize that's going on. Hey, at Fully Accountable, you can find us. You can find me in my social footprint. If you're a e-commerce company or digital brand who's doing 7 figures in revenue and you need fractional CFO or controller, full office services, we're here for that. But we eat our own dog food. We're continually trying to improve. And the thing I've noticed the most, if I can leave one encouragement, is how we're battling this lack of routine right now as a society.
That's a perfect way to end it. Thanks for being on, and I'll make sure I promote the company and we've been working to do more promotions and affiliate promos and stuff like that. So we need to get Fully Accountable back on the bandwagon there too.
I love it.
I know we drove some leads
Love
for you
it.
in the past. So, but you've been awesome,
Yeah,
man.
let's do it, buddy.
Thanks for your
Yeah.
time.
Hey, do me one favor. Tell
Yeah.
Max his new little pimp studio looks great.
All right, I'll let him know. I was actually just there with him last week, so cool, man.
It looks good.
Enjoyed it.
All right, buddy. See you, pal.
Thank you for listening to Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player so you get updated when new episodes are live. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support is to leave a 5-star review and share the podcast with people in your life that you feel would benefit from these types of discussions. Visit openlyoutspoken.com for additional details on the show. Find out how to connect with Jeremy on social media and learn more information about Jeremy's personal and business life. We'll see you next time.